It was a gloomy day, but the people of the city didn't let it put them off their business. The square throbbed with them, every inch of the grass market filled with people hawking wares, or preachers saving souls, or urchins picking pockets. In a moment, everything would change. The screams washed down the crowd like a wave. So packed was the square, it took a few moments before anybody could see anything. Then the crowd parted down the middle. Men, women and children all fought to be away from the cobbled road and tried to climb the buildings that faced the square. Most didn't manage it, and some were felled simply by the weight of others trying to save themselves. The air filled with a dreadful mix of clattering wheels and screaming horses. A small boy who was clinging to the wall of a public house rearranged his grip and strained to see. At the bend of the road, he could see the stagecoach as it wove drunkenly towards them. The horses spat froth as they galloped blindly onwards, the driver clinging for his life to his perch and at the same time trying to pull the horses to a stop with the reins. As the stagecoach raced by, the boy saw two men standing on its roof. The doctor crouched low as he tried to surf the stagecoach. The driver was doing his best to steer the horses as they bolted, but it was a losing battle. Plus, he couldn't fight the natural urge to look over his shoulder at his attacker. The pale man was having as much trouble as the doctor in keeping his balance as the stagecoach rocked, but he was still advancing. "Hey!" the doctor called to the man. The pale man turned, and the doctor got a brief flash of black marble eyes and a triumphant feeling. Then he saw a piece of the stagecoach roof splinter and looked again. The pale man's shoulder now had a dry red tear in it where something had struck him, attracting his attention. The doctor risked a glance behind him and saw 4 red-jacketed soldiers firing from the steps down from the castle. "They're shooting at us!" cried a voice from below. The doctor ducked low to avoid perforation and stuck his head out over the edge of the stagecoach. There was a passenger sticking his head out of the window and waving wildly. "Don't worry," the doctor called as the coach veered violently to the left. "Just stay inside." The passenger gave him a strange look and ducked back inside. The doctor risked another look behind him and saw the soldiers running after them whilst trying to reload their muskets. He pulled himself unsteadily to his feet and turned back to face forwards. The pale man seemed to have lost interest in the driver. Instead, he was making shuffling steps towards the doctor, sharp little fingers outstretched. "Hold on a moment." "Aren't you—" the doctor started to shout to the passenger. The stagecoach hit a loose cobble and bucked into the air. The driver let out a cry and tried to keep hold of the reins, and the coach and his wits all in one messy manoeuvre. The coach tottered left, then teetered right, before deciding that perhaps it would remain on all 4 wheels for a few moments longer. The pale man lost his footing as the coach kicked, and ended up diving for the doctor, talons outstretched. Martha ran. 3, she panted. 4, 7. On her right, she saw the archway, although it looked like it was just a tunnel that burrowed deep into the cellars of the houses. Martha turned sharply and ran into the darkness, the smell of fish rushing up to greet her as she ran. The ground sloped away from her feet at an alarming speed, and she knew that if she lost her footing for even a moment, she'd be tumbling. It took her a moment to realize that she had passed through the archway and was out in the fresh air again. As the ground dropped away, the tops of the houses remained on a level, and the sunlight found it harder and harder to reach her. Martha burst out of the street and suddenly found herself blinking in the sunlight for a moment. People were losing their footing and falling all around her, and the sound of their screaming was deafening. She wasn't going to make it, she knew. 3, 4, 7, she panted. Suddenly the crowd thinned around her. At the same time, the screams got louder as they realized the danger they were in was so much more imminent. Another moment and Martha was alone, standing gasping for breath in the middle of the cobbled road. She had to bend double just to force the air into her lungs. "Run, girl!" someone shouted. She stood up straight and composed herself. As she turned, she saw the stagecoach careering down the road towards her, the driver having given up all pretense at control and just looking for the right moment to jump. The horses were heading straight for her, teeth bared. She held up a hand and didn't flinch. 3, 4, 7, she said. The stagecoach bounced again, and the doctor's pale attacker rolled across the roof. For a moment he looked as if he might fall, but at the last minute he twisted and somehow ended up back on his feet. As the pale man rolled his glassy eyes in the doctor's vague direction, a thin sliver of drool ran down his chin. "I can help you," the doctor told him. A musket shot rang out. Martha swallowed hard and closed her eyes. 3, 4, 7, she said. The sonic screwdriver felt heavy in her hand, but she held it high. Her thumb found the switch without her having to look, and she pressed it down. It wasn't making any sound, or at least none that she could hear. She risked a peek through one squinting eye. The horses were nearly on top of her. Her mouth fell open, and her eyes opened wide. The stagecoach was hurtling towards her, the driver crossing himself and jumping from his perch to land awkwardly on the cobbles below. But she could see the highwayman and the doctor standing on the roof of the coach. The doctor was holding his hand out to the highwayman, saying something the clatter of hoofbeats was drowning out. The highwayman on the roof twitched and tumbled from the stagecoach roof. Martha barely had the time to register that he'd been shot before her heart leapt at the sight of the doctor launching himself after him. The two met in mid-air as the doctor spun to protect the highwayman from the stone cobbles. Martha realized she was still standing in the path of the stagecoach. It was too late, far too late. All Martha could do was worry about whether the doctor had hurt himself in the fall. The horses let out a strange noise and slowed. It was so odd to see. One moment the horses were charging foam-mouthed towards her, and she had no chance of survival. The next, they were starting to slow. Martha felt a moment of elation before she realized that the stagecoach itself wasn't slowing down. As the horses both moved to the left, suddenly interested in the buildings lining the street, the stagecoach sped on at top speed. The gathered crowd didn't know what to do, and neither did the horses. They dug their feet in indignantly as the coach pulled them backwards down the road, their hooves grinding sparks from the rough stone. Martha let her hand drop and made a run for the dubious protection of a pub. When she looked behind her, the stagecoach had spun to a halt 10 yards down the road. The cobblestones were scuffed, and the coach was sideways on to the road, but otherwise you'd be hard-pushed to guess that anything was wrong. The horses pawed at the ground skittishly. Martha smiled and took her thumb from the sonic screwdriver.